It's a pleasure to have our friend Senator Katie. That's what we ought to call you, Senator Britt. Senator Katie. You're such a nice person. Come out of Alabama. You had a great response to Biden's State of Confusion speech, and you see how the media hate anybody who dares to challenge the narrative, Biden, their ideology. Have you ever had anything happen like that before in your life?
You know, I have learned that when you are over the target, you take on flack. And so that is how I know that we hit it head on. And I have told a number of people, just like I said in my remarks, we need everyone in this nation to step up and to get in the arena. And you know what? When you get in the arena, you take arrows, but it is worth it when you are fighting for something you believe in, when you are fighting for the country we know and love, when you are fighting for the next generation. That's something I am willing to do every day and will continue to do and be proud to do it.
You're backing a law now. Tell people about it and tell people why you're backing this law and why you're promoting it right now.
Well, Mark, I think you have seen the disaster that has occurred at this border at the hands of Joe Biden. In his first 100 days of his presidency, minutes after taking office, he said, we are going to halt construction of the border wall. We are going to stop deportations. And he promised amnesty to millions who are here illegally. We know those things act as a magnet for people to come here. Then, as if that weren't enough, in his first 100 days, he issued 94 executive orders. The disaster that we are seeing at the border right now lays at no one's feet but Joe Biden's. He inherited the most secure border of all time. President Trump gave our country the safety and security of a secure border, and we've seen what Joe Biden has done with it. So one of the things that we've seen in that is obviously his abuse of parole power. You saw with President Trump and even Obama before him that they used the presidential parole authority to the tune of average about 5,600 people a year, paroling them into this country. We have seen Senator Lindsey Graham has dug into this, both obviously in his role in judiciary and appropriations, but President Biden has used that authority to parole on average 1 million people a year. As part of that, obviously, he uses this blanket parole authority, the CHNV program, and we have seen that take the lives of too many innocent Americans. So whether we're looking at fentanyl poisonings or brutal deaths, rapes, among other things, we know what is at stake, and it's the safety and security of Americans. So I was very proud to come together, obviously looking at all of these things and thinking, how can we return some order? How can we return law and order for the people? We had Representative Collins from Georgia who brought this forward, the Laken Riley Act, brought it forward in the House. It passed actually with all of Republican support, Mark, and even several Democrats came to the table because they understand what's at stake. So I have joined with Senator Ted Budd, one of my freshman colleagues, and we have brought a Senate companion. So the Laken Riley Act, what it would do is obviously if someone who is here illegally commits theft or burglary, which we know that her murderer, Laken Riley's murderer, did, it would immediately allow ICE to both detain and deport that individual. It would also allow states' attorneys general to be able to make sure that they're able to force the Department of Homeland Security and others to enforce the law. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to do that until we get President Trump back in office. Obviously, we're going to elect him in November, get him back in office in January, return some law and order to this. But until then, we're going to have to fight with every tool in our toolbox to keep Americans safe.
Is this the sort of thing Schumer will bring to the floor, or he'll hold it off the floor because he'll be concerned more about the political embarrassment to Biden?
Mark, I don't think he'll bring it to the floor. You had us try to live. You see that? Live, you see it. And then Ted Budd is down there doing it, and they blocked it. And it shows they're not serious about actually securing the border. They are more interested in facilitating this mass migration. They are more interested in looking at voting blocks in different sections of this country than they are actually putting Americans first. So we're going to continue to fight. We're going to continue to try to get it attached as an amendment to the pieces of legislation that are moving this week, because we believe in it, and we believe in making sure that we're doing everything in our power to keep Americans safe. And to me, this is common sense, Mark, don't you think? I mean, if you literally have, if you have committed a crime here and you are here illegally to start with, detaining and deporting you should obviously be a bare minimum. But you think about this administration, Mark. Think about it. So we've got obviously with ICE, they are always reluctant to do what they need to do and support our courageous ICE officers. We have about 6.3 million people on the non-detained docket. Of that, we have at least 1.3 million on the non-detained docket of ICE that have been given their due process. So we should all be able to agree, given their due process, and issue their final orders of removal. And Mark, they won't even do what it takes to remove those individuals from this country.
They're violating existing law, and they're doing it with impunity. We're with Senator Katie Britt of Alabama. I have an article here that the United States has changed its position on Hamas from defeating Hamas to degrading Hamas. Now, how degrading is that to all the rest of us, Senator?
It is absolutely and totally unacceptable. I mean, when you look at what happened last week, when you see the leader of the United States Senate go to the floor and demand a regime change in the shining democracy that we have in the Middle East and one of our greatest allies, it is absolutely unacceptable, and it's despicable. The only regime change that we should be demanding as a nation is for Hamas to be permanently removed from Gaza. And I cannot even begin to wrap my head around this strategic blunder that both Schumer and then Biden, layering on top of what they have done to Israel, undermining them. They should be supporting them. They should be out there on the Senate floor demanding Hamas return every single hostage. Let's us not forget that we have 130 hostages there, 5 of which are Americans. Do you think that every time they get out there and they undermine Israel, that puts them in a stronger position to negotiate with Hamas? Absolutely not. We need to say thank you for eliminating this threat. Please finish your work. We want to obviously make sure that every innocent life that can possibly be spared but we have to eliminate Hamas. There is no way that we can win peace if we don't win the war. And I think it's totally unacceptable for America to turn its back on its ally. And I am here to tell you that that others in the United States Senate stand firmly shoulder to shoulder with Israel.
Now, apparently you were in a discussion of sorts with the Prime Minister of Israel today, correct?
Yes, he zoomed into our Republican conference policy meeting today. We had a great conversation with him. You know, he focused on the work almost being finished. He talked about obviously dismantling every single battalion, talked about destroying their underground infrastructure, and talked about why, going into Rafah is so essential, that we cannot win the war. They cannot win the war without going into Rafah. He equated it essentially to if we had said at World War II, you know what, we will eliminate the Nazis everywhere, but we're going to leave the ones in Berlin. We're going to leave those there, and we're going to keep moving. It's just absolutely unacceptable. And he made the point that Israel's victory is our victory. And we talked thoroughly about how to deal with Iran. I mean, the best way to deal with Iran is standing strong with our greatest ally, Israel, and then also making sure that we do everything possible to make sure that they do not get nuclear weapons in their hand. Can you imagine this conflict as we have Iran's proxies carrying these things out if they had that? And I want to say this, Mark, I am disgusted that when you look at what's happening, you look at this administration, the Biden administration, abandoning the Pompeo doctrine, abandoning that. So they are, at the same time we see last week them waiving sanctions on Iran, they are putting sanctions on Israelis, and I think that is the last thing that we need to be doing.
And they're funding Iran directly and indirectly, which means they're funding all these terrorist groups. And Israel's getting bogged down. It's the only country with the only leader on the face of the earth who has the guts and the wisdom to figure out how to stop Iran from getting nukes. Iran's going to get nukes on Biden's watch. Nobody's doing a damn thing about it. And other than a handful of us, nobody's even talking about it, Senator.
Oh, I could not agree with you more, and that is why we have to raise our voices louder than ever. Let's look back to President Trump. He was the most pro-Israel president we have ever had. You look at the Abraham Accords, you look at all of the different things you do, and then look at the stark contrast to now. So we look at Iran, knowing that they're the largest state sponsor of terrorism. We know they're funding Hamas. We know they're funding Hezbollah. We know they're funding the Houthis. We know the best way to get to them is to dry them up financially. So Trump comes in, and he has the guts and the vision to actually put bone-crushing sanctions on Iran. We see that drying their oil revenues up to $7 billion. Now, let's look at this, a stark contrast to what we're seeing out of the Biden administration, where now Iran has oil revenues of $80 billion. What do you think they are doing with that money? I will tell you, they are funding more terrorism, and they are looking for more ways to increase nuclear proliferation, and it is completely and totally unacceptable. It is completely and totally foreseeable, and this is why we need a leader back in the White House. We've got to get Trump back in there. He understands peace through strength, and he also understands standing with our allies.
All right, Senator, I know you have to go. Thank you for all you're doing. You're doing a fantastic job, and you're making a difference. God bless you, my friend.
Thank you, and please keep telling this story. We've got to make sure that we stand with Israel and we defeat Hamas.
You bet. God bless you. Take care.